The Constitution and Youth. This is a partnership between the Trinidad Youth Council and the National Advisory Committee on Constitutional Reform, inviting young people to come out and share your views on the Constitution this coming Saturday, the 4th of May from 9:30 a.m. at City Hall in San Fernando this morning. I want to welcome to the show the President of the Trinidad Youth Council, Mr. Shane John, alongside the first VP of the Trinidad Youth Council, Terianne Baker. Good morning and welcome to the show.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you.
How are you guys doing this morning?
Good.
I'm doing well.
Lovely. First of all, tell me the purpose, Mr. President, of organizing this event between of course, the National Advisory Committee on Constitutional Reform and the Trinidad Youth Council. What's the purpose of the event?
I think the simple thing is to hear from young people, because of course the Constitution Reform Committee, which was set up by the government and the Prime Minister, focusing on constitutional reform, they're at a stage now where they had several conversations, and now they want to hear from young people. So ideally it's to hear from the young people and the youth in Trinidad. So we're focusing on two areas, San Fernando and Port of Spain, and of course I know they are going to Tobago, but now we are focusing on Trinidad. So this Saturday is to hear from the young people from Trinidad, South in particular, on the plans and ideas in terms of where young people want to see Trinidad go, and in particular as it relates to constitutional reform.
Terianne, tell us why it's important for young people to attend and give their opinions in this session.
Well, first things first, the Constitution forms the basis upon which public officers are appointed, and it sets the parameters of their offices. And so as young people, we tend to say that, yes, we lack representation, and yes, we want to make a difference in Trinidad and Tobago, but it is all enshrined in the foundational elements of our society, and that is the Constitution. So in my opinion, young people should come out and share their opinions with the general public and with the committee that has responsibility for submitting terms of reference to the Parliament on constitutional reform, because more or less you're placing yourself in a position to speak directly to the areas where you feel like there's a void or there's a gap as it relates to young people. And not just young people, in terms of just examining the system on the whole, in terms of accountability. How is accountability measured, and how is it, basically implemented in our society? It is all enshrined in the Constitution. And so if we are going to try to make a true difference, then it means looking at the foundational elements, i.e. the Constitution.
And this has been my thing, right? Ever since this board has been put together to go through the constitutional reform, I keep coming back to this one question: is how many young people, for example, know the Constitution to begin with, to be able to make changes? In your experience on the Trinidad Youth Council, like how many young people actively are aware of what's in the Constitution to begin with?
I think that's a good question, but ideally this Saturday in particular, what the committee has advised us and what we want to share with young people is that you don't necessarily need to know what the Constitution has in it.
To change it?
Well, no, I mean, when you come to the event on Saturday, one of the things that we're going to do is educate young people as to, the processes of making changes to the Constitution, as well as what it entails in terms of the executive and the legislative and the judiciary and the makeup of the Constitution. But ideally, what the committee is focused on and the partnership is focused on is really and truly hearing what young people want to see in terms of employment. What is your thoughts on employment, and how does that come back and ties back into the Constitution?
Okay.
So it's not only the technical legal jargons and the legal references.
Yeah, no, that's not what I meant. I just mean in general, like in terms of, all right, so for example then, if it is that somebody comes and they say, you mentioned employment, right? And they say, I find I don't have enough jobs for people like me, and I is a seamstress or a tailor, as the case may be, and I need some more work, as the case may be, right? Is it that the committee is now going to take that information and see where it fits into the Constitution and apply the changes as necessary, or the suggested changes?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. How can people register to be a part of it?
Well, the TYC does have an Instagram page where there's a registration link in our bio that you can place the information to get all of the information that is necessary for Saturday. And again, just echoing Shane, as you register, to also remember that this is a forum to demystify the process.
Right.
And a lot of young people, yes, they may not know about the Constitution, but that is because they simply looking at politics on a whole. Unless you are involved in the space, you don't have a vested interest. And this is one of the ways that we are trying to change that by encouraging young people to make themselves aware aware of how they can make or have an active voice and make an active change in Trinidad and Tobago.
Do you think enough young people care?
Well, I don't think it's a matter of caring. I think it's a matter of steering young people in the right direction where they see a tangible end. That is what I think it's about. I think young people care about representation, and young people care to see themselves in a place where they are seen as important elements of society. I don't think it's a matter of whether or not young people, are interested in it. But why would I be interested in something if there is no end for me?
If they can't see the benefits of it.
Correct, and I think that is the challenge.
Yeah. Shane, can you demystify, as we were talking about demystify for us a little bit about how the Constitution directly impacts the youth?
That's a good question.
So an example of one of the, let's go just one of the ways that the Constitution can impact the youth directly.
Well, I think one of the most important things is the right to voting. And it comes back to when we look at the numbers. We have 33% of our population voting. And when you look at the youth participation, if young people understand that if you come out and you vote, you have a right, one, and two, you would ensure to be a part of the conversation. That is part of your constitutional right, and it speaks directly to the Constitution, as well as you have a lot of young people within the system where, for example, employment, a part of the Constitution now can speak to. And when you look at things, is that let young people, in terms of the public service, you have this entry into the public service, and it only focuses on improvement, or when you look at employment and it speaks to your elevation within the public service, it's only based on your length and service.
And time served.
And your time
almost
served.
Like jail.
But yet you have these young people that are focusing on education with your masters, your degree, your diplomas. And your public service is telling you you are entry level, and then based on your years of service. That is something that affects young people. And if you get into the conversation and you speak to, listen, we want to see that the public service is not only a place that is based on merit of years of service, but we want to add it to qualifications and what is your ability. And then we would see Trinidad and Tobago develop in a place where it should be. So those are the things that, little small things that impact us. Those people, young people, listening to TTT now in the office, these are the things that are impacting them in terms of, should it be that in the next 5 years when my senior transitions, should I be a part and should I be elevated to another position, or should it be based on merit and examination, based on the system that has been put in place through GATE and so forth? So it's about what impacts us every day.
See, Terianne, too wrong. I mentioned GATE and Terianne just twitch there, boy. No. Terianne, if you had to say that you wanted to, or you've heard people, or young people around you, or even yourself, wanting to make adjustments to the Constitution, what are some of the focus points?
Well, first things first, looking at the oversight policy, well, not policy, but the mechanism by which oversight is done at the Parliament, it's almost like a system of checks and balances on yourself.
Right.
So, and I mean, when you examine and you look at whether or not your leaders are transparent and accountable to you, then you have to examine the ways in which that is done. And so even if we look at joint select committees, according to the Constitution, the composition of a joint select committee is made up of members of both houses.
Right.
And in some cases, it's not going to be the sitting minister that's going to be in a committee that has responsibility for examining that area or that sector. But it's still your colleagues. It is still a mechanism where you are overseeing yourself. And another thing where I think young people would be interested in is that to become a member of Parliament in terms of the House of Representatives, you can be 18 years old. But to be a senator, you have to be 25 years old. And now that may seem like it's not, a barricade to participation or becoming a member of Parliament in both houses. However, to me, it seems as if that is just something that is on paper, and that is not something that is recognized as a natural part of choosing candidates to represent you. So the Constitution needs to go a step further, where there is direct statements that say, okay, well, you're in your members of Parliament, there should be a particular quota that makes up young people between the ages of XYZ, XYZ.
Well, they say 16 to 35, right? That's what they say the young people are supposed to be. And let me say thank you all both so much for joining us this morning. And of course, this coming Saturday, May 4th, we head to San Fernando City Hall Hall so that you can be a part of the conversation on constitutional reform, especially young people. We want to hear from you. Come on out and support. And of course, next week we head into Port of Spain.
Yes.
We're in Port of Spain.
City Hall in Port of Spain.
City Hall in Port of Spain
yes,
as
please.
well. All right, fantastic. So you have this week in San Fernando, next week in City Hall in Port of Spain. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and all the best for these conversations.
Thank you
Yes,
for
thank you
having
so
us.
much.
No problem at all. We take a quick break and come back with more in our morning show. Stick around.
We on a ship riding through the boat.